Tom Deacon, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on Travel Talks. How are you doing, mate?
I'm very well. It's the pleasure's mine as well. When you messaged me on the good old Twitter and said, follow me, I need to DM you. I was so buzzing, so excited. I looked at your bio. I saw 6 a.m. I saw all this stuff and I thought, this is it. My agent, get rid of him. You don't need an agent. But no, it's so lovely to chat to you and to talk about something that means a lot to me, and that's traveling the world in the work that I've done over the last 10, 15 years.
Awesome, mate. So I wanted to start by asking you, how important is travel to you?
It's huge, Alex. I seem to have basically I've scraped by a living from I don't know how I'm going to get found out one day. I've been able to get paid to travel the world at times, watching football. Watching Champions League football, no doubt, and no less, should I say, and also just travel. It excites me as a stand-up comic, and I've always been able to do that. And even going on holidays, I just love that adventure. You never know what's going to happen, and it means everything to me. And I think 2020 has been the year that should definitely get in the bin, but I wasn't able to travel as much as I wanted to. I was geared up to go to the New Zealand Comedy Festival, and I was really sort of annoyed. I understood why I couldn't go, but it's really, I'm optimistic 2021 will allow a little bit more travel again for me. But when you know you've got that drug, that's what travel is for me.
Yeah.
And you can't have it. I've gone cold turkey. I'm not enjoying it.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? I wanted to start by talking about stand-up comedy and take it all the way back to when you first started and ask you, what made you want to first start doing stand-up comedy?
I think for me, I love watching comedy and loving how everyone seemed to love the comedian, the funniest person in the room, or the person that's got the best joke. Everyone seemed to warm to them. And I kind of wanted to be that person because I enjoyed watching it so much. And that's what I did. I wanted to do stand-up comedy. All my mates at school, when I was at secondary school, were like, yeah, but there's one flaw, Tom, you're not funny. And I was like, yeah, that is harsh. But okay, well, I'll work on it. And I went to university and got an opportunity to do some stand-up comedy and never looked back really. And also the idea that I can get paid to do something you love and never have to work in an office, not knocking people who work in an office, but just for me, I wanted to be out there, basically be lazy and play PlayStation as much as possible and then work in the evening. But it gave me that outlet. And like I said at the beginning of this podcast, I feel very lucky that I'll get found out at some point. But it's 13 years now of doing stand-up comedy.
Wow.
Absolutely love it. Wouldn't be without it.
Awesome. But obviously that first time that you ever perform in front of a crowd must have been terrifying, surely. So I wondered if you could give us a story from your first gig.
Putting me on the spot. First gig. Well, oddly enough, in Southampton, that's where I'm from, there used to be an open mic night at a place called the Talking Heads, which doesn't exist anymore. And what they used to do, you'd get there early and you say, can I perform 10 minutes? And there was a massive traffic light in the corner of the stage. And it'd be green until 6 minutes. Then it would go amber for the last 2. And then red means you need to wrap up. You've got like a little bit of time left. And I was just so excited to perform. And I'd written down some jokes and I thought, yeah, I'm funny. I back myself. I've got this. So I went down with a good mate at the time called Ryan O'Reilly. He's a professional musician. He's brilliant. Love him to bits. He went down with me and he just told me at college, he was like, oh, I play the guitar. And at the time I was like, everyone said that, like a Jack Johnson, Banana Pancakes, whatever that song was, right? And you'd be like, oh, really? You're a guitarist? Okay. Why don't you go on before me and I'll go on after you? He absolutely obliterated the room. He was such a talented guy and I didn't know that. And I backed out. My first gig didn't actually happen because I pulled out. I absolutely choked. I was at the back of the room and I asked, like a girlfriend at the time, family members, best mates, I'm doing my first gig. And everyone was like, tell everybody Tom's doing his first gig. Let's see if he can do it. Choked, having to go around to everybody when they were sat at their table going, I'm not going to go on. I just can't. I just don't feel like, and I've never not gone on stage again. But that's a fun memory because it was that turning point. I was like, you can't invite people along and then not perform. But that's one of them. And then actually performing at a professional comedy night, the first ever time. Again, I asked mates down and then knew that I couldn't back out of it. Got on stage, had some jokes that went down well, and then never looked back really.
Amazing, mate. And then that obviously progressed to you winning the 2007 Chorlton Student Comedian of the Year award. Massive belated congratulations, mate. I'm about 13
Get
years
out of
late,
here.
first of all.
Don't do that. No one does that.
I didn't know.
No, yeah, no, because it was a small award. I don't think anyone in the last 13 years has said, by the way, Tom, congratulations on the Chorlton. That's the first time that's ever happened, Alex.
But I've gone onto YouTube before and looked at the Chorlton Student Comedy Award videos of people who've then gone on to be massive comedians. So, for example, like Simon Bird, you're talking about Ed Gamble, these kind of names. Who were you up against to beat and win that award?
Well, it was the Edinburgh Festival. My heat that I had was in Southampton. And because it was sponsored by Revels, that was it, Revels that year, everyone who got knocked out in the preliminary round, I guess, got a box of Revels, like a big box of them. And I was a bit annoyed actually because I didn't get a box of Revels, but I went through to the final, finished university. So this is my last year ever of entering that competition. I believe the year before Nathan Caton won it, who's a fantastic comic that I still work with. My year, Simon Bird got knocked out because he deliberately broke the rules. He wasn't supposed to mention Revels in his comedy skit or set, but he did that, and he just read out the rules, and it was like a funny man is Simon Bird. I don't need to explain who he is to people from the In-Betweeners. But I went to the final, definitely Ed Gamble, and it would probably annoy any other comedian who was in that heat or the final that I don't mention now. But it was a really, really tough competition. And again, I invited lots of mates along to be in the crowd because they were all up there. This was our sort of final year. And to win it was mad, got £2,500 and no Revels. So again, I was more annoyed about I didn't get any free Revels. But that actually, with this podcast about travel, the other prize was to be flown out to Canada. So I'd never done a long haul flight. Went to Toronto to compete in the Great Canadian Yuck Laugh Off, it's called. It's a particular comedy club there. So that was my first travel, and I definitely got a taste for traveling then.
Brilliant. And I wanted to talk about Edinburgh Fringe because obviously that's where the final was taking place. I've been to Edinburgh Fringe, Edinburgh Festival before. 25 days of comedy, like it's absolutely incredible for the audience. But what's it like for the comedian?
The opposite, Alex. It's the opposite. Anybody listening, you want to go up and see people broken. It's like, kind of like a roller coaster where, Ronan Keating said, you just got to ride it. It's hard in Edinburgh because you're up and down, your mood swings. 1 minute it's raining, it's chucking it down. You've got no audience in your room, and then the other days it's packed, and it's a roller coaster of adrenaline, emotions. And if you do want to see one of your favorite comics broken, that's the place to go and find them on the street, wandering around, handing out flyers. But it's an amazing festival. I'd done 4 solo shows there. I don't plan to go back anytime soon because I don't fancy losing more money, because that's the thing. That's the thing that cuts us deep. I think the most expensive Edinburgh had was £12,000. I was out of pocket at the end. But here's the positive side. That was a show I was doing about completing a 2010 World Cup sticker album, which then from that led on to doing the Eurofan.
Nice.
So everything happens for a reason. And I think I've just paid it off 10 years on. So well done to me.
What are your thoughts on Edinburgh as a city, though?
Beautiful. Stunning place. I love it. Around there, Arthur's Seat is a great walk. You go up there. The people are brilliant outside of the festival, because people have to understand the whole of Edinburgh still carries on, but a lot of the people that live there move out so they can charge 3 times the amount on their rent. And so 1 month they can pay off 3 months because you're paying so much to go and stay there. But the city's beautiful. The food's amazing. I took my girlfriend last year. We went up and loved it. But we now want to explore more of Scotland because she was like, I've got a taste for it. I want to go and see more. And that's the beauty. But you don't get to see that during the festival. You're so concerned. You're fixated on how many people are in my room. Is this joke funny enough? When are the reviewers coming in? You don't get to appreciate how beautiful like the meadows are in Edinburgh. But yeah, I'd love to go back, just not at the festival.
Yeah, don't blame you, mate, after hearing that. So I want to speak about some more places that comedy has taken you. You mentioned Canada and Edinburgh, but where's the most obscure place that comedy has ever taken you?
Obscure. Wow. I wasn't expecting that as a question. Where is it obscure? New Zealand was an amazing adventure that I went on, because there's moments in your life. I think when I look back to places I've traveled to, it's a point in my life and I go, oh, I love that because of I was going through this in my life, or I'd just gone through a breakup, or this was going on in my work life. So you have those memories. And New Zealand was a great place. It's performing in the little tiny places that were great. But actually, Australia, now come to think of it, I did a gig in a place called Capella, which I think has a population of maybe 500. It's just a road. It's just you sort of look left and right, and then you've gone past Capella. That's it. And I performed there on the Melbourne Comedy Festival Roadshow, flown out for 2.5 weeks to go to a different town every night. And these are the really backward, like no one really goes there on holiday places. And Capella was odd. It was in their hall, their town hall. I think the whole town was in there, if you can call them a town. Very obscure, but they loved you more because you'd come to their little place. So I think that's I probably crashed and burned like I did on most of those gigs. But that was obscure because of the size of the town and doing a gig there.
Yeah. So obviously Aussies are renowned for having a good sense of humor, but what's it like going around the world, performing to different countries, different sense of humors? Do you find that your jokes land better in some countries than others?
Yeah, I think you can get a sense of it. A lot of the gigs that I do in Europe, I did one earlier in 2020 in Vienna and Budapest, and you've got a lot of expats who are there. So you connect with them on I'll tell you what, mate, it's nice to be here rather than England. Let me tell you the problems with England. And then they can connect with you. So it's about you connecting with that audience, because a lot of the comedy, as long as it's, what tends to happen is comedians will turn up to another country and I go, oh, I've got this word, a duvet. Do you have duvets over here? Because that's the punchline to the joke. And I go, oh, no, they're called donors, mate. And you're like, oh, okay, right, I've got to change that bit. Does that work? But the essence of all comedy is about people and connecting, and whether it's about relationships or random obscure things, people will get that. Just some of the words you have to change so that they're on board with the story takes the most amount of time. But what I love about that 2.5 weeks in Australia, come to think of it, was a girlfriend at the time kept banging on about Australia. Oh, I'd love to go to Australia. I want to go to Australia. And I was like, oh, couldn't think of anything worse. Australians, so annoying, noisy, just full of themselves. Nah, not for me. I'd rather go to America. I quite like America. Then I get offered we'll fly you out for 2.5 weeks, Tom, come across. I went there and I was like, no, I'm probably not going to like it, but a gig's a gig. I'll enjoy it. I fell in love with the place. And as soon as I got back, I was like, oh, we have to go to Australia. This is a place. Oh, the people, that warmth you get. And it definitely did come across when doing the gigs, that they are a kind of bubbly, lively people. Like if you come in miserable, they don't particularly like that. They like the upbeat sort of style. So I did actually go down well there, but yeah, would love to go back.
Awesome, man. And of course, you must be missing stand-up this year. We spoke about it before you came on the podcast, about you performing on Zoom. How does that differ? And it sounds like a stupid question. I've just said it out loud and it sounds like a stupid question. How does that differ to performing live?
Well, for example, in this flat that my girlfriend and I rent, I'd never had a gig before where my girlfriend will sort of come on the stage and go, you're shouting, I can hear you in the lounge. So that's never happened before. So that definitely differs. But say this setup right now, we're doing this podcast and I'm chatting to you. I'm in a spare room and this is where I do my Zoom stand-up gigs. And there's nothing weirder than saying goodnight to people and closing the laptop screen down. And then you're like, what am I going to do now? Whereas before, the buzz was the travel to the gig. What could possibly happen? Writing your notes down on piece of paper going, I want to do this joke, I want to try that. And then after the gig, you have a beer with or a drink maybe with another comic, or you're rushing to another gig. There was this adrenaline, there was this buzz. I was in London, and now it's kind of like, yeah, I should actually Hoover. Yeah, I should Hoover now. That is not. It's a massive come down.
Yeah.
Or you're like, yeah, we'll put some dinner on, and But at the same time, being able to connect with people is what I love about stand-up comedy. And in the Zoom gigs, I might be hosting them and chatting to people and looking inside their living room, their lounge, their bedroom. You are connecting with people. So it has given me the outlet to connect, but I haven't been able to feel like I've actually been working or feel like I'm getting that buzz from being somewhere else rather than my spare room.
Yeah, it sounds tough. I wanted to move on and talk about Eurofan now. We spoke about it previously. I was a huge fan of it growing up, and it got over 8 million views. I was having a look the other day. I wanted you to explain to people who aren't such a massive fan as I am what the concept of this series was.
Get ready for this, guys, because this is and will probably be the best job I've ever done. People called Copa 90 were putting together a show, and I previously mentioned about being in Edinburgh, and I did a sticker album show where I completed it, and that was the kind of whole point of it. I suggested this idea to a guy. He was like, well, actually, we've kind of got this idea of the Eurofan where someone travels around and watches Champions League football matches. And I was like, yeah, that's great. And they're like, do you like football? And I was like, love football. So they added another element where for every match I would travel to, whoever the home team was, I would support that home team and then find out about everything that club has to offer, why the fans are passionate, why they support that team, who are the favorite players, what's the city like. And that's what I did. So I traveled around for a whole season, going to different home matches in the Champions League. Started off at Malaga, went to Romania, to Cluj, went to support Real Madrid, Dortmund, Bayer Leverkusen, all of these, Spartak Moscow, bonkers trip. I would then normally get the shirt, hang out with the fans, have a translator, try and understand and just get amongst it. That was the phrase that was used a lot for Eurofan. And it was incredible because I'm a football fan. I'd be watching some of the best players in the world at their peak playing. And that's essentially what the Eurofan was. I was kind of living everyone who is a football fan's dream of going to watch these teams and then support them. And yet at the same time, I'm a massive Southampton fan. So I would take on board that team. I know that isn't the quickest or shortest summary
I love it.
of what the Eurofan was, but you kind of have to see it. It would be an adventure. I wouldn't have a ticket for the game. How am I going to get a ticket? That was what the episode was all about. And I miss it a lot. I have to say, I miss it a lot.
Oh, I loved it, mate. Was there an episode which you enjoyed the most personally?
No, there isn't, because I was going to ask you actually, what did you like about the Eurofan? Because I just rambled on about it and what it was about. Every episode was different. Some were more challenging than others. We did it for 2 seasons. So if I went to go and support Real Madrid in season 1, what were you going to do for the next year? Because I've already done all of those things. So we mixed it up. We met different fans. All right. One memory that sticks out is just being on a blag. That's what the Eurofan was about. We had a team of maybe 4 people, traveled around, and we'd go early morning, cheapest flight possible, arrive, and then go, right, you have got 48 hours till the game, or you've got 24 hours before the game. We've got to get there, find something, make essentially magic happen, make something happen. And that was the adrenaline. It was traveling around the city, finding fans or going into a pub, contacting people on Twitter. Does anyone want to help out the Eurofan, et cetera, et cetera. So you never knew what was going to happen. We turned up in Turin. It was Juve versus Celtic. Celtic were already out of the competition. And we get to the training ground, and director's with me, funny guy. If anyone's worked with a team before, he's the weirdest, oddest, most fascinating bloke called Alex Grazioli, Italian man, lived in New York. He spoke like this all the time. Okay, Tom, we don't know what we're going to do. Okay, so you have to make something happen. Very intense guy. We're at the training ground. All the reporters are going through to the press conference where Antonio Conte was going to talk about the team, the lineup, how they were going to play. And I had a BBC pass that I always took on these journeys in the first season, because I was thinking, well, look, if anything happens to me, say we get caught doing something we shouldn't or what have you, I'd have that BBC pass, like, I'm a journalist, I'm out of here. Not that I was, I just did a radio show. That was all I did. And they said, well, why don't I see if this can get me into the press conference? So you imagine outside the training facilities where they got the security and everything. I just walked up. I've got a hoodie on. I had my Juve top underneath, and I was mic'd up. And I went up to the security guard, just showed the BBC. He went, prego, like just carry on. And I was like, oh my word, I am now walking to the press conference. Got up there. There's loads of people, and I think I'm going to get caught. 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 What am I going to do? Woman comes up to me, starts speaking in Italian, and I was like, scusi, like, because I learn a couple of phrases every trip I went, scusi. And she said, oh, you are from BBC Scotland. And I was like, immediately, just, that's right. I turned from a 25-year-old into a 40-odd, just like, that's right, from BBC Scotland. And she said, no one else has come from the Scottish media. And I was like, oh, it was a pretty heavy night. So I'm now lying about this situation. She said, well, the press conference is going to start. Do you need a translator? And I said, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. So a press conference, Sky, the whole media team are at the back. Antonio Conte, Andrea Bizzali, I think I'm pronouncing his name right, the captain at the time, are at the front. They put a translator at the front of the desk as well. Every Italian question that was asked was translated into English.
Oh, wow.
Just for me. Honestly, I thought I was going to get arrested. I genuinely was standing in this room. I've blagged my way in, and then you've got this all going on, and I'm feeling so guilty. So then I had to take out my phone, which is all I had, and pretend I was filming and making notes. So I shouldn't have been there. And press conference was now even longer because they had to translate everything for me. And then as Andrea Bizzali walked past and Antonio Conte, I unzipped my top and went, could you sign my shirt? That's how I got Andrea Bizzali's signature, and then got the heck out. That's a very magical moment for what the Eurofan was all about. And a lot of the stuff we couldn't show because we just couldn't film it. We recorded as soon as we landed till the moment we left, hanging out with the fans. But the hardest thing for me, I think, when I look back at it, was actually being emotionally invested in certain teams, like Atletico Madrid at the Champions League final in Lisbon. I think that was 2013. I went there supporting Atleti. They play in red and white. Rocky Blancos, as it's called in Spain. I'm a Southampton fan. They play in red and white. That's how they ended up playing in red and white, Atleti. So there's a connection there. Yeah. They lost in the final. And then they're like, right, Tom, right, Deco. That was always you say, Deco, we're going to do a link now when the fans are exiting the Stadio de Luis stadium, and I've got to do a link. And they're like, be more upbeat, Deco. Just watch the team. And you've got fans shouting at me in Spanish, like telling me to do one. And I'm recording but amazing. If you've never watched it, it is ridiculous when I look back at it now. But that wasn't just Champions League football. From that took me to the MLS to go on an American trip there. It took me to Bermuda for the Island Games. And then it took me to the World Cup 2014 in Brazil, where I was there for 5 weeks working with Maya Jama as my co-host, poet Vujanic. It's just, incredible. It started something, but my buzz for traveling was already there. But then every 2 weeks, I'd be flying off to a new destination and getting amongst it. That was the idea.
Yeah, well, it was absolutely brilliant. It still holds up to this day as well, because in preparation for this, I just went back and blitzed as many as I could. And watching the Dortmund one just brought back pain more than anything to see the fans. It kind of made me realise, you quite don't realise when you're watching football every week and they've got that fake crowd noise and you listen to it and you just kind of forget there's no one in the stadium. But when you see it for yourself, that fan footage that you were filming of the fans in the stadium roaring, and you kind of go, yeah, it was absolutely amazing, wasn't it? And we can't do that anymore.
Which one, Dortmund, was that? Because there was two trips. There was one that I had where they had to beat Real Madrid by more than 3. I think they had to score 3 goals. They only got 2 against Iker Casillas, and I was next to the Gelbe Wand, which is the yellow wall. So if there's any sports fans, that's like they sing "You'll Never Walk Alone" before the match. It's a proper, the hairs are stood up. It's a tingling moment. And every time I'd go to a new stadium, I'd be pinching myself going, I would have never have paid for this on my own to come out here and be amongst it. And the Gelbe Wand is just a yellow wall of Dortmund fans. There was that match they lost, which was hard because I really fell in love with Dortmund. They're
easy
the
to
smaller
do, isn't
club.
it?
They're the smaller club. And then the other one was against Malaga, where they
Yeah,
got
that's
through.
what it was. I didn't want to say Malaga just in case I trip myself up, but obviously you had such a strong relationship with the Malaga fans,
Yeah,
and you bumped into them, didn't you? And you were supporting Dortmund, and they
yeah,
didn't quite like it.
and that's, I think, the beauty of football. Whether you like football or not, and you're listening to this, it's just those connections. The Malaga guys were called the Giri Army, so there are a lot of expats living out in Malaga, and they took me under their wing. They were so excited to be part of it. And do you know what? We stole something from Soccer AM, oddly enough, where they would walk up. Some of the fans in this pub would say their name and walk forward like the
Oh,
old
yeah.
school.
The
You know,
crossbar
they call me
challenge.
Dave
Yeah.
or something, or Redders. But I've really got on with them, and they took us, the whole team, actually under their wing, sort of banging on about how I've got John Smith's here. You can get John Smith's on tap. I am the only pub in Malaga where you can get John Smith's on tap. Proper characters. And then we went to Dortmund, met up with them in the square. And oddly enough, that was the match. For some reason, I'd been to the Dortmund fan shop and decided to take a gnome. They love garden gnomes in Germany.
Yeah.
With a Dortmund colour. I took it into the stadium with me, a gnome, because I'd have to film on my own. So that was odd. Like before selfies were really a thing, I'm there at a ground annoying people. Just go, yeah, it's me, the Eurofan. I'm in here. I'm in the Westfalenstadion, Iduna Park now, and have a gnome with me. And to watch the Dortmund fans leave around me early, they'd been moaning at me for like, this is not your seat. You're not sitting your correct seat. And I was like, jog on, mate. Like, it's a football match. Like, enjoy it. To Malaga to lose in injury time, and to be one of, in the little area where I was, maybe the 10% of the Dortmund fans stayed for that incredible moment.
Wow.
So I felt very privileged. And it is odd when you take on the identity of a new fan, that I actually felt for Dortmund. I was like, well, that's well done to them. But at the same time, you know, I'm just watching Jurgen Klopp run and skid on the turf, and he's celebrating with all his Dortmund players. I'm then immediately feeling, oh, I'm really sad for Malaga. This was their one opportunity. So it was an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah,
It really was at times.
Do you have a favourite stadium that you went to? Obviously, Signal Iduna Park must be up there.
To have it's good old St Mary's, Southampton. Obviously is cherished. It is actually a nice stadium. Doing match day hosting there, but I think the maddest day. I mean, the Champions League final was incredible in Lisbon. It's hard. The Allianz Bayern Munich stadium is amazing. Juventus's stadium, there's a shopping center just underneath, so that's good if you wanted to get a few nibbles on the way home. Schalke was freezing, but then again, I loved Romania, Cluj. They were playing Man United, and yet there's barbed wire all around in certain areas. The Romanian fans, Romania is separated between Hungary, Romania of old, and the new Romania. So you have two sets of Cluj Chefre fans supporting the same team. Those that identify as Hungarian Romanian, and those that identify as just Romanian. And so you're singing two sets of songs. That was iconic, but yet it was the smallest, oddest, weirdest stadium. That I couldn't pick one, basically, because they're so, each have their own unique atmosphere. Being outside the Bernabeu when there's the street, you couldn't move in the streets for Real fans. It was a really tough question. I've been asked it a lot, and I still don't really have an answer. I should by now have an answer.
And I couldn't move on from talking about Eurofan without touching on KSI, because I had to go back and watch that episode, because straight away you see KSI in a thumbnail and you click it. Everyone's guilty. What was it like? Because for me, that was prime KSI. 2013 comes on screen. The second you pan over the cameras, that KSI, full of energy, full of life. That was him, perhaps in his prime. What was it like working alongside him?
Different is the best way. I think the world of YouTube, and then this isn't to knock KSI in any way. I actually really got on with him. Once the camera's off, I found him to be, actually, I could connect with him. I could engage, I could chat, and find out a little bit about his life story. I was like, mate, do you want to go for a drink? He said, I don't drink. I was like, well, I'll have a pint. You can have whatever you want. Let's try and connect. And I actually really got on with him and understood his vision and what he wanted to do with his channel. but he was being paid a huge amount.
Yeah, I bet.
To be there because he had the subscribers, because he had the followers on Copa 90 at the time. So there were different shows, essentially. If you imagine, like there was Poem Vuge, Comments Below.
Yeah.
And then you had KSI was doing one where he would just travel to places, meet other FIFA fans who like enjoy playing the game. And he would just be, there's no other word for it. Irritating is probably the best word for it. Very irritating, very loud, but that's what people loved about KSI. And we were in Amsterdam. It was freezing, minus whatever it was. It was ridiculous. And I knew that he'd been paid thousands and thousands of pounds to be there. But we got on. I remember I was having a coffee in a coffee shop, and the producer and the team that we were working with were like, "You've got to do something, KSI. You've got to go in there, be KSI, go and cause chaos." And that's when he ran into a coffee shop, shouted, everyone stopped, looked around. They thought it was a robbery. And then he just picks me up and carries me out. And it's like my face is grimacing. I'm embarrassed. Yeah. But that was what made the show interesting. But some of the best moments where just him and I were in Ajax's stadium watching them win. And fans would come up who knew who he was. And we were just able to just chat as two guys going to watch the football. So freezing cold weather, he was actually really sound, really got on with him when the camera wasn't rolling. When the camera was rolling, I was like, what is he going to do? How is he going to make chaos? And I'm like, jovial, but I'm being professional. That's the one thing when I got into
you're holding it together.
Like, I'm the straight guy now. I'm like, I'm never normally the straight guy. This is ridiculous. But epic. And from meeting him and how that helped Eurofan and more people's eyes and attention were brought to it. But so very, very cool. And just to explain it, went to Romania, Cluj. I'd never been to Romania before, didn't know what to expect. Bumped into Max Rushton and Lee Dixon. They were out there filming something, I think for Soccer AM, and end up trying to blag an interview with Lee Dixon ahead of the match. And that was the kind of energy of the place, like being on the same flight as Gareth Southgate. Awesome. And you're just like, I'm so in this world, and very much far removed from it. But KSI, all the best to him. But we're not staying in contact. I mean, I did message him a couple of times, but I didn't get a reply. So thanks for bringing it up.
Sorry, mate. So I could talk to you about Eurofan all day, but I want to talk and move on to more different elements of travel now. And I asked you in advance to kind of have a little think about some answers if you could. But a question which sometimes people don't always have an answer for is the most adventurous trip.
Every trip that I went on with the Eurofan was the most adventurous. Nothing quite lives up to that adventure. But at the same time, I think adventurous for me finished in Spartak Moscow. So I'm flying back from Russia, and the next day I'm flying again, but out of my own choice, my own holiday. I went to New Orleans in America.
Amazing.
And I love football, but I also love American football. And on a previous trip, maybe that's actually the most adventurous, but let me finish one thought in my head. This is what happens when you don't have an auto cue. I traveled to New Orleans to meet my parents. My mum had been to America before, but my dad had never been. And he said, it's not for me. I'm not going to enjoy it. And I said, look, I love NFL. I've been before. You'll love it. Let's go. I'll meet you out there. Let's go to a game. I'm a big San Francisco 49ers fan. They're playing New Orleans at the Superdome. It'll be incredible. New Orleans has got a lot of history, and I met them out there. So like I've literally landed from Russia, get home, get some kip. Then it's up 6 hours later. The suitcase has been tipped out and then refilled. Let's go to New Orleans. And I loved it because it was beautiful watching my dad, who'd never been to America before, see it and fall in love with the culture, which he said, oh, I don't like that. Everyone's happy. What are they on about? They're giving it the big one. Oh, no. But he's there and he's like, oh, this is really fun. And going to tailgate on our way down to the Superdome, they fell in love with it. And it's a very, very special trip. But I think the adventure for me was, it's just one thing to another, and then go and see everything. So there's that. But then also my first trip with my best mate where I saw NFL was we flew to LA. We then had a couple of days. Then we went to San Fran. Then we went to Las Vegas. Then Austin, Texas. Then
Nice.
Miami, and then flew home. It was a 2-week like blitz of everything.
It sounds
Saw
unreal.
baseball. Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Like we just mapped it out, and I think I ate 14 hamburgers, like burgers, in the space of in the first week. And my mate was like, I don't understand. Like, how have you managed that? I was just like, I'm in America. I'm gonna,
Take it in while you can.
Yeah, eat what you can, and when in Rome, go for it. So
Yeah.
that was the adventurous, because we would be doing. Here's where we need to be. Here's where our hotels are booked or our hostels. Let's just do it. I think that's probably the most adventurous of just going. And he's a planner. This is something that there's two types of travelers. Those that plan everything, the finite detail, like, oh, we know we need to be here at 8. I've booked the train, blah, blah, blah. And then there's me, which is like, let's go with the flow. Let's see what happens, because you can make the best plans, but something will happen. And I learned that from the Eurofan. So I was like, we just need to know, we need to get to Miami. Let's book the flight nearer the time. And that's the best holiday, because you end up staying maybe, or we change the hotel dates, and that's adventure sort of holiday for me.
Awesome. So New Orleans, you've mentioned there, an amazing city. Is it your favorite, or do you have a different favorite?
No, it wasn't my favorite, because every city is like, oh, I loved it for this. I loved the Creole. I loved the jambalaya. I loved the food. I remember going to a bar that had music on, live music. So my dad was loving it. My mum was in one room, and then I just wanted to watch the NFL that was on the TV in the other room. For some unknown reason, I bought a cigar, and I thought I was, Billy Big Balls. Just sat on a bar. I got my own room because no one was in there, because everyone's at the music gig.
Yeah,
and I think I was talking to the barmaid. I think that's what it was. And I'm just and so I've got these iconic. They're almost like pictures in my mind of this trip that was just like brilliant. I loved that bit. We went to an area down where tourists don't necessarily go to, and we ate around there. Magical. But when I think, does that compare to when I was in Vancouver last year? I loved Vancouver. Vancouver had the water, it had the ramen. They got this incredible cuisine there. And then I'm thinking, but I watched the ice hockey. That was incredible. But then if I compare that to Madrid, when I went, and Philadelphia the year before, I loved Philadelphia. And these are my holidays that I've kind of paid for out of my own pocket to go there. There isn't one place that stands out for me in terms, like, I loved Bologna for the food. I loved being in Florence. It's really hard to say one place stands out amongst others, because there's so many places I still want to go and see. Probably when I'm on my deathbed, I'll say, do you know what? I've decided I really like the Isle of Wight. Like, do you know what I mean? Probably at that point.
Yeah. So obviously cities are completely different to the kind of trip and holiday you get from going to beaches. Would you consider yourself a city break or a beach break kind of person?
Definitely a city break person.
Yeah.
We did, blimey, when was it? 2019, went to Italy and Florence. We did that, but we broke up the trip because in Bologna, you could fly for £20
Wow.
on the Monday, come back on the Friday to Montenegro, which I'd never been to before. So my girlfriend and I went there, and that was a beachy holiday. And all I do, which is why I'm not ideal for the heat, my brain just cannot function. I kept turning to her saying, oh, I'm really hot. And she goes, yeah. Oh, it is hot, isn't it? It's 40. And about a minute later, my brain inside, I'm talking to myself going, do not say how hot you are again.
Yeah.
I can't help it. What comes out is I'm really hot. Like, I am useless in the heat. I think it's my Irish genes just in an absolute meltdown. So the beach holiday, if I'm into a book, I'm reading one, which isn't that often, I can totally see why it would be brilliant for people. But for me, I'm all about the exploring. Oh, there's this coffee place. We have to go to that hipster place. We'll go there. Go, look at the size of that guy's beard. He is proper hipster. Then we're off to another place, find this restaurant. And that for me, that relaxes me. Like, people think that you'll be tired walking around, but it's the excitement of the next thing you might find. Not a museum person. When I think city break, a lot of people say museums. I am all about the food, coffee, and then the cocktails or a nice trendy bar that I'm like, oh, wow. Like, that for me is I'm refreshed, ready to go again.
I'm exactly the same, mate. It sounds like a perfect trip just describing that. I wanted to move and talk about stand up in cities. So when you get asked to go to, let's say, like Antwerp, Brussels, cities I know you've been to do stand up in the past, do you make sure that you've got a couple of days either side to kind of explore the city, or is it very much like an in and out kind of job?
Normally enough for stand up comedy, it is the promoter running the gig will have booked it for you. So they'll say, we've booked the Eurostar. This is the time you need to be there, and we'll get you the first one out. That tends to be the life of a stand-up comic. You don't want to spend too long in a place, which goes against what I like to do. So often I will ask the promoter, can you just like even give me an afternoon and then I'll come home? That tends to be what I'd like to do. But Finland's a place that I've been to gig a lot, and that is a very I love the place. I love the people. They don't do small talk. They are bizarre. Like you'll be chatting to someone from Finland and you'll be like, oh, it's great weather, isn't it? They go, yes, it's very good weather. And then you're like, oh, and I like your shoes. I'm sorry, I've run out of small talk. They do not do small talk. They don't banter. You don't know if they're laughing or enjoying something, but that's what makes them so interesting. I went to Lapland to do comedy.
Oh, wow.
In a place called Rovaniemi, in a football stadium. There's only one stand, just giving you the heads up on that. One stand, and it was 2,000 people, and they'd all packed in there for a festival. Incredible. I ate reindeer. I was there for 5 days. I had 4 gigs, so I had that extra day to explore. I don't know why that just popped into my head, but those are the trips as stand-up where you kind of get to enjoy it a little bit. Stay one night in one place, move on to the next, and so I'd seek that. I often talk to the promoters, can I come back? Compare that to going to Norway, where it's quite expensive. They might say, you can we'll pay for the hotel for the 2 nights that you're gigging. This is in Oslo. If you want to stay longer, you can pay for it. And then I looked at the hotel prices and I was like, nah, that is not happening.
Don't worry about it.
Nah. Do you know what? Actually, nah, that's fine. I'll just come back next year. Is it possible I can come back? So I do love to explore, because if you're going to talk to an audience, I like to walk around the city a little bit, find the funny things. Like in Norway, it always goes down well. The joke that their airline is SAS. So I had this story about, the landing was, I didn't land, I got thrown out. It's the SAS, you've got to land. So it's just a silly little thing. Yeah. And they're like, this is funny. Yes, you may do this again. Yes, yeah. You've taken an interest in where they live. So I think that's very important as a comic to go and do it. But it doesn't mean I always get to see a little bit more of the city.
Yeah, awesome. So to move on to a separate question now altogether, do you have a favorite country?
On the spot again with this question. Do you know what? I was worried about coming on this podcast thinking, do not sit on the fence today, Tom. Do not sit on the fence. Just have a definitive answer. But then another part of my brain was like, yeah, but then you'll regret that, because in a year's time, you'll change your mind.
Yeah.
You'll have said Finland. You love Finland. But now you've changed your mind. I do like America. I like it a lot. Because every little state is different to the previous one. And I've still got loads of places that I want to go to in America to watch NFL. But there's places I don't like Miami. I remember listening to the podcast with Tubes, and he talked about it, and I was like, I totally connect with that. It's devoid of personality, or the personality that you're seeing is sort of vacuous, like it's about the showiness of it. Yeah. Favorite country, I think I still will say America. Just because of all the trips I've had with work. I loved Kansas, a great place, watching MLS and managing to piss off Thierry Henry. But yeah, I'm going to say America. And
it's a great answer. It's a great answer.
Thanks.
No one can argue with that.
Do you know what?
Nobody
if you'd
can
have
argue with
said,
it.
Tom, just make this in 30 seconds, please make a decision. I'd have given you America. There you go.
Always go with your gut as well. You have to, because I don't have a clue what I'd say, and I ask the question every week.
But then again, Alex, I did like Lithuania, which is a weird thing.
That's obscure.
It is obscure, isn't it? I'm going to throw that down. I'm going to add that in
Nice.
because I didn't do comedy there, but I went with my girlfriend because I'll answer that question. £12 from
really?
Oslo. to fly to Lithuania, £12. That's £24 for both of us. Our suitcase, how much? £24. I'll give you the answer. Went to Lithuania, did not know what to expect in the city Vilnius.
Vilnius. I was going to try and impress you by telling you I couldn't remember it. I couldn't remember it.
And then Akinfenway,
Yes,
the Beast.
yeah.
He played in Lithuania, and I read that in his biography because I was doing some work with him a couple of years ago, and I read the book in preparation and got him to sign it. All he did was take the book, show everyone in the room and go, look at this, I've got a book and someone is asking me to sign it. He made a big deal about it. I was like, don't do that, mate. Could you just sign it and just be done with it? He played in Lithuania, saw a different side to Lithuania that he talks about. Whereas my girlfriend and I, we didn't know what to expect and then fell in love with it. It helped because it was cheap. But we just thought, like, this is not the average holiday. People would say, like, why are you going to Lithuania? I was like, why not? Let's go and explore. But yeah, is it my favorite? No, I'm still going to say America, Alex. I'm still saying America.
Nice. Does that inspire the way you travel, trying to essentially tick off countries and visit as many different places as possible?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, I can see it now in front of me, a tube that has a map, a world map where you scratch off where you've been. And there's part of me in my head that is reluctant to start because I'm someone who likes to complete things.
Yeah.
And I would then suddenly want to go everywhere. And I know already, which makes me sad, that I can't go everywhere.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So like, and then life, not that it gets in the way, but girlfriend and I are thinking about, well, we'd like to buy a place one day. We better start saving up the deposit. Oh, we'd quite like to do this. And then I'm thinking, yeah, but we can't travel then because you're a teacher. That's not the best time to go to Vietnam.
Yeah.
And it frustrates me because I can't go to all these places and I'm itching. But when I do pick a place, it's not just because of how cheap the flight is, but I'm thinking, I've never been there. Let's go and find and make memories in that place. So that's the adrenaline or the buzz that I get from it, especially and that's why we don't tend to go to the main touristy sites, because that doesn't give us any buzz, as it were. It's about finding the little things, the off the beaten track.
Awesome. So you have spoken about food a couple of times, and food is something that I enjoy and make sure that I get the most from. You said that you don't plan trips. I'm the complete opposite, just to let you know.
Really?
When I'm going to somewhere, it's like straight on TripAdvisor. I don't know if you use TripAdvisor very often, but I go straight to mid-range prices.
Oh, hello.
Go straight to, I'm not going to go to, okay, this is the best restaurant in, let's say, Miami, because I'm going to get straight away, be paying 100 quid for a meal. I'm going to go mid-range prices. Then we're talking the best restaurant. So for food, is there a specific best restaurant or best dish you've eaten whilst abroad?
Yes. And I love the fact that you are very much like me and my girlfriend, because the top end restaurants, you're not, it's too stuffy. It's too, don't get me wrong. Like in Lithuania, we thought, let's go all out. Hello, look at us. We're splashing the cash here, which is a fraction of what a top end restaurant is in London. We had a 7-course meal and it was phenomenal. Like, it was incredible. But I wouldn't necessarily do it. But the places, like the food stalls, I love street food. I love watching the series on Netflix, which has got me excited about going to Vietnam or to Thailand just to eat the food, or South Korea. But I think the best thing we did, I watched Chef's Table, and the woman from Mexico, a legal immigrant, moved to Philadelphia and started up a barbacoa. It's called the South Philly barbacoa, and it's basically like a barbecued meat, and that they normally traditionally have on a Sunday. So I watched it on Chef's Table, and I said, if I ever go to Philly, that's where I'm going. So in the same way that you do, I do prep. Yeah. Oh, I'd love to go. If I'm going to go to that country, or it becomes a possibility, that's where I'm going to go. I've got a list of these places, to go and have coffee. Oh, I've got to see that view, and I've got to see the sunset, and I've got to have the picture, and then I will put that in a frame, and I may actually put that picture up on the wall when we have a place. But the South Philly barbacoa, we went on a game day to watch the Eagles, and and we went there, and I said, we've got to get up early because I've seen it on the show. This queue gets long.
Yep.
And we got up early, and my girlfriend said, is this going to be worth it? And we get there, that just so special, that memory, because it teed us up for the rest of the day. And it was next to nothing, so cheap to go and have these tacos with barbacoa in. And there's loads of other restaurants I've been to or places I've eaten, but that one sticks out.
Awesome, man. What a great story. Is there a best country for food, you would say?
For me, I think America is great. It depends. If you're a vegetarian and you're on a health kick, stay towards California and all of that side.
Yeah.
But some of the pulpit barbecues they have, and because they've got such a diverse range of people from different parts of the world who now live in America, and they bring their cuisine with them, you're not going to go very far from a really good meal. Philly had this incredible like a food market. We just ate there pretty much every day that we were there. And provolone, gotta be provolone cheese with these greens that are drenched in a gravy. Oh, a worldie. Like, if I could order that sandwich, I would order that again. So I do like America, but then you go to somewhere like Bologna and you're eating the freshest pasta. That has a real sort of place in my heart, because I'm still trying to find the recipe now for this dish that I had in Bologna. But yeah, if nothing else, this podcast is now making me feel hungry and disappointed that I can't be back in those places. But then again, you just have to be. I live in London now, and you don't have to go far. I mean, I know it's all delivery and takeaway now, but you don't have to go far to find this incredible cuisine and try something new. And I think that's what, when you're traveling, you're not forced into it, but you could just eat Mackie D's. You could eat what you know. But being adventurous and just going for it, you never know what you might find, and that's the allure, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And on living in London, often discussed as one of the best cities in the world, it didn't get mentioned in your section, best cities. Is that because you were thinking of holidays and trips, or where does it rank for you?
Yeah, no one's going to London for a little holiday, are they? But then, having said that, it's because you take for granted what you have around you. I remember I got given this book, Walking Tours in London, which I know does not sound like a riveting read, but it's the history of a place where you've got music, like the earliest coffee shops that were in London, and what happened in those. It was like that was the place where you got your trades, your stocks before internet, or you'd go and talk to other people and find out what people were trading in. Like, you're like, wow, like life's changed so much. So London is the hub of history, and I can understand why so many people travel there. But for me, I work here. I'm annoyed at 5 o'clock when I'm trying to get to a gig and the tube's packed. I'm annoyed at that. So you take that for granted. And actually, I will back myself on this. Actually, I have started cycling more in 2020 because of this lockdown, to coffee shops to do a takeaway.
Okay.
And like, I'm cycling 15 miles there on a little Brompton and then 15 miles back to get a flat white. And once I started cycling around London, I fell in love with it more, because you suddenly realize, and this is for traveling as well. I went across the bridge towards London Bridge, I think, and then I hung a right, and then I was in Aldgate East. And then I was like, oh, blimey, I used to live in Bethnal Green. Well, that's only up there. It was like in my head, a mind map started connecting, like puzzle pieces. And I understood the relativity to different areas of London. I was like, it's not actually that big, really, the center. You could cycle around it. And so, all right, I do love London as well. I do
Reluctantly
love it
admitting it.
No, I admit it more. But that's only because of opportunities. And whereas before I wouldn't have put it down. I'd say, this is where I work. This is where stand-up lives. But and the north of England, obviously, stand-up comedy lives as well, around Manchester, and I've gigged there. But London, for me, when I started, was the hub of it. But you don't see it as the holiday destination. You already live there. Why would I suddenly go, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and rent a little Airbnb in Pimlico. Are you, Tom? Why are you going to do that? Well, you know what I mean?
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, unless there's a flight or a train or something, I don't feel like I've gone on a holiday.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So to move it back to holidays, is there a holiday that means the most to you?
In terms of what?
In terms of the way you look back on it now, maybe something special happened whilst you're away, or whenever you think back to it, you think fond memories.
Every holiday.
It's hard because I feel like with this question, I'm trying to make people go deliberately deep.
Okay, you want me deep? All right, okay.
Yeah,
Here we go. I'm just loosening up a bit. Okay, part of the Eurofan, I got to go to Naples, which for me, at secondary school, in a geography class, we were asked, you can do a project, A3 piece of paper, and immediately everyone was like, rah, sir, why do we have to do it A3? That's massive. Doing an A3 piece, you can pictures, you can draw on it, you can write. Where would you like to go in the world? And I remember at the time, loved Italian food. It was pizza, pasta. I didn't know anything else existed in Italian cuisine at that point. Parmigiano, what's that? Aubergine. Well, you can't put that down as an emoji. So I am looking at Italy, and I looked at Rome, and I did a whole like project on it. I just fell in love with it. And then I was like, oh, but Naples as well. That looks incredible. The fish markets, the football. And on my 16th birthday, my parents surprised me. We went to Rome, and I was buzzing, as you can imagine. And we get there, we look around the Trevi Fountain, all of this, like the Colosseum, the Emmanuel building. I'm like, this is history, right? I was blown away by it, eating gelato, ice cream all the time. And then they said, look, it is your birthday. You got an option. You can either have a football kit, like the actual one from the shop. And I was kind of lent towards Roma at the time with Francesco Totti playing. So I was like, I'd quite like the shirt. But then they said, or we can actually go to a game. And I was like, every time it would be the game. So we went to watch Lazio versus Milan.
What a tie.
It was 1-1, so it was a bit dire, but we went. We didn't know what to expect. We watched the riot police come out for all the Roma fans trying to attack. The Milan fans attacking the Lazio fans, and there was a buzz on. Then I was already ready for the Eurofan, all the skirmishes. But my parents were like, "Well, this is what you want. You love Italy. You've always wanted to come. You're now here." And we chatted. We tried to communicate with the Lazio fans who are watching. They're basically trying to explain to us, you need to bring a newspaper to the stadium. And we did wonder why everyone's got that. It's because the seats are so cold in February. They sit on a newspaper. And Veron, who had just moved to United at the time, I believe, was back in the stand, and they put a camera on him because he played at Lazio, made his name.
Yeah.
And the crowd erupted. Everyone was so excited. Shevchenko scored for Milan, and Jankovic, I think, scored a free kick for Lazio. Incredible moment. And then from there, we're just so hungry, parents and I. We're maybe at about 11 at night, we find a pizza place back in the center of Rome. Like that's
amazing.
The memory for me of always wanted to go to Italy. I'm now in Italy. Then I get this extra going to a football match and eating, like, it probably could have been the worst, cheapest pizza ever. But it didn't matter. We were hungry. We found this pizzeria still open. And it was like, oh my, that was eating gold. It was just like, wow, what is this? So for me, that trip is the one that I don't talk about ever. But it was started that from my parents giving me that, let's go and explore. That's the one. I hope that was deep enough for you.
I like it, man. I like it. Sure. Great story, great city as well. So great choice. So let's talk about the negative side of travel now. We've spoken about it in such a nice way that makes it feel like it's only ever amazing. But of course, travel can be stressful and all these different elements. Is there a place that you would never go back to?
I think at the time, 2014, Brazil, fell in love with the country. What a place. And then going to the favelas, which were pacified at the time, I wouldn't necessarily go back there now. And for me, I'm going to answer this by saying I've got my girlfriend now. At the time I went there, I was with a team, the Copa 90 guys and Maya Jama and the rest. And I didn't have any tie. I had nothing that I had to protect or be part of, or I just had to care about myself. And I found Brazil to be like just a brilliant place. I could really go off and mingle, but I think it felt a lot safer because of the World Cup being on. It's not to say I wouldn't go back, but I'd be very wary of going back to some of the places I went on my own, thinking, well, what's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to meet some people. We've got a camera here. It's going to be great. So I think probably the favela, and yet they were the most beautiful. And the people that I met in the favelas were just just phenomenal. Like I was swapping hats with them and just having a drink with them and eating. But yet it's not to say I'm scared of going back, but I wouldn't go back with my girlfriend now. It's a completely different
situation.
But I think that's what travel is, that you can be scared of going to places because of the fear of what will happen. Like I really want to go to Detroit, but we've watched on YouTube a guy that goes down 8 Mile with a dash cam on, and it's, like the crime rate's up, there's this, that, and the other. And I was like, I'd really like to go to Detroit. It's a fascinating story how the automobile industry was there. It was booming. And then it was the first, I think, city in the world to go bankrupt.
Wow.
And my girlfriend's like, why do you want to go there? And I was like, but this would be so much fun. And she was like, how is that fun, seeing a city broken? And I was like, because you don't see that every day.
Yeah.
So I'm now thinking of holidays or places we travel for kind of like, I'm not even a dad. I'm now that boring person who's like, well, I don't know, my girlfriend's not going to necessarily enjoy that. Whereas internally, I'm like, that's the best place to go because.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's a place that I wouldn't go, but there's places that aren't on the top list now.
Yeah, I get you.
Like I want to go to Mexico, but yet all I hear about Mexico, never been. But I want to go to Mexico. Oh, well, that's annoyed me now.
It is an amazing place. Food, culture, it's incredible. Easy just to stay in the hotel is what I'll say. If you get a good hotel, it's easy to stay in the hotel. I've got a really bad story from the time my girlfriend and I went to a place called Tulum in Mexico, which is about 2 hours away from Chichen Itza, which is one of the 7 wonders of the world. And this man comes up to us and says, oh, we're doing a bus tour out to Chichen Itza. It's going to take 2 hours there, enjoy it, 2 hours back. And we're sat by the pool with strawberry daiquiris being delivered to us. And we're like, you know what? We're not going to go. And it's only when you come back from that place and a year later you go, we were 2 hours away from one of the 7 wonders of the world and we didn't go.
No way. That's what infuriates. That's what infuriates when you're traveling. The downside is you can't see everything. It's like what I said earlier about you want to see every country, but you can't see every country. And then you start planning it for the people you're going with. Like, oh, well, we'll do that and that, and that'll be for this person or a family holiday. You can never get everyone really happy about it. But so like we went on a family holiday to Skiathos and loved it. It's
Where's
great.
that?
It's in Greece.
Okay.
And it's like ABBA Island. So if you're an ABBA fan, which I've not even seen it, I've seen ABBA. I've watched on YouTube ABBA, but the what's the film? The Greek.
Mamma Mia.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nailed it, right? That's how much I took no interest in it, but everyone goes there. But we loved it because we were in this all-inclusive holiday, which I'd never been on before. And I fell in love with that. I was like, this is great. Stock up on breakfast. You can't move. About midday, you can finally get in the pool without worrying about sinking. And then you just look forward to dinner.
Yeah.
Brilliant holiday for all of that. But there were so many little things that you could have gone and done around the island. And I didn't because I just stayed in this all-inclusive. But yeah. What was the point of that? The point of was
I don't remember.
You do get frustrated because you can't see everything. So then what you do is you go, we'll go back there next year. The problem with that is you'll run out of years in which you can go to a new place.
Yep. Oh, tough, man. It's really tough. Is there a place that you could always go back to?
New Zealand. If you're going to travel that far, you've really got to go for it. Doing the New Zealand Comedy Festival. I actually went out there on a whim. Actually, I went traveling there first for a wedding with my best mate, and then of course Australia is only 3 hours away, so I've got friends that live there. So that's, you can, in your head you can justify, well, it's only a 3 hour trip. I'll go on a plane. I'll go over to Sydney. So saw friends, fell in love with New Zealand. Like I know I'm gonna go back on myself now and say America's not my favorite place, but New Zealand, just loved it. Some people bemoan it and say, oh, it's like it's stuck in a time trap. It's not. It's not. The place is beautiful. The people are good natured and they like the outdoors and stuff. And there's nothing that can kill you unless you fall off something, obviously. But there's no animals or insects that can kill you. unlike Australia.
Yeah.
And I remember stayed with friends in Christchurch in the South Island, and then we were watching New Zealand versus South Africa on a TV, and I went, "Where's that?" And he's like, "Oh, that's down in Dunedin." And I was like, "How far away is that?" He's like, 6 hours, maybe 5.5. I was like, "Oh." He said, "Well, do you want to just borrow the car?" So the day after, I made it down, left early morning, traveled down for 6 hours and watched the evening session. But that journey is kind of a lot of just, what we'd consider like their motorway is like an A road for us.
Yeah.
But it's vast, and just explore. And I was on my own, just exploring.
Wow.
That's like a brilliant place, beautiful people, great stuff. And there's so much to do. So that's another place. I feel like I'm suggesting places I've been.
Mate, my bucket list is growing tenfold because of this episode. So if New Zealand was perhaps a European country for whatever weird reason, you would always go back there. That would be the place you always
100%.
Yeah.
But it's just too when you're on a 17-hour flight, it's just 17 hours on one plane, guys. If you've never been on a long haul flight, that's next level. You're rocking back and forth. Just please, can we stop? Can we stop? But it is iconic, and there's so much to do in terms of like water rafting and all these kind of things that you don't get to do in other places, like going to see some glowworms, going abseiling, like I forget the name of it, where you're paragliding.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm just running with this instructor. What's the one where it's kind of like it's got its wings on the top and you're holding onto the bar in front. It's not paragliding. I want to sing "Free Falling," but that's
yeah. I can't think of the name.
Hang gliding. It's hang gliding.
Cool.
Hang gliding. That, like, you're just running off a mountain, and you're like in New Zealand. It feels like if you feel like you're gonna die, that you're gonna have the best moment. So to doing that and just you're at one with nature, and you're like, wow, that's definitely a place I could probably live.
Are you a proper thrill seeker?
No, not at all. But I think at some point in your life, when I was working for Capital, we did a charity skydive, and during the time and something in my life that was going on, I was like, what's the worst that can happen? And I suppose it's death, right? Yeah. That's the worst thing that can happen. And then at least someone's getting a holiday insurance back, right? Obviously. So, go with a loved one, they can get the money. But I was like, what's the worst that can happen? This is so out of my comfort zone. And normally I'd go, well, I wouldn't do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not a thrill seeker, but once you've done something, it was for charity, I couldn't back out of it. And I thought, I'm like, that is an adrenaline buzz that I've never had before. So I turned it down a notch in New Zealand and went hang gliding, but still I could have fallen and died. Yeah. But I was like, wow, it's like there's moments on a holiday where you're like, this is lovely, I'm relaxed, or, oh, that's interesting, that's fascinating. And then there's another buzz, which is like, oh my God, what could have happened? Actually everything was all right. So you've gone through all these stages of emotions, and you feel by the end of it, when you return home, you're like, we got to do that again next year. Let's save up. Let's go.
Yeah. Amazing. So we've spoken about all these amazing places you have been to, but let's move it on to a bucket list destination now. A place which you've never been to, but you really want to. Perhaps the first place that you'll go to once all of this shit disappears.
Which cannot happen soon enough. I've always liked the look of Japan. Yep. Got into a series on YouTube called Worth It.
Amazing series. Amazing
love
series.
That.
So good.
Because very simple. You'd be, obviously, I know they have an option. Say they look at rice. They're like, here's the really cheap version, here's the mid-range, and then here's the ultra expensive, where they're putting truffles in it and what have you. I really like the idea of Japan in March when they have the cherry blossom, the fall. I'd love to go there. That's on the list, but so is Vietnam. Always wanted to go to Vietnam. So they're the sort of top two that I would love to go to, but they're the ones that require that little bit extra thought and planning, and when's the good time to go. And my girlfriend's a teacher, so that ruins that. So yeah, they're two on the list right now, because I want to see the old Japan. I want to see the new Japan, where there's no other word for it. It's a genuine head fuck. That's the only way I can describe it. I tried not to swear on this, but that's genuinely how I talk.
If you would not be swearing, I've been swearing the whole time.
Oh, it's like a head spin because you're like, what is this? I found that in Moscow.
Yeah.
Where I was like, no one speaks English. What? How am I not? I don't. Like, if you go to Europe, there's always going to be someone speaking in English, but somewhere. But in Russia, it was the words are completely like. That's what I feel like Asia will be.
Yeah.
For me, and that is that would be an experience, the sensory overload.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Tom. It's been an absolute pleasure. This episode's been brilliant, and I know it's going to be received really well as well.
It's long, isn't it?
It's,
on, Alex,
mate, longer than
long.
that. 1 hour 10.
No.
It could have been 2 hours. I didn't want to keep you.
No. I've got nothing to do in lockdown. No, it's an absolute pleasure. I hope people have enjoyed it. Or that's what I think is brilliant about travel. When you talk to someone and someone talks passionately about a place, you're like, what are they banging on about? Why do they love Finland so much? And then it inspires you or to go and to be open-minded. So I will definitely take on board Mexico. I'll try and force that through in the next relationship agenda meeting. I don't know if anyone else has that. You have like a yearly review.
How's yours going to go this year?
I've got a few pointers that I need to raise, and also a lot of things that I need to improve on. But that's the moment, like, oh, let's do it. Here's a place I didn't mention it. Cuba, game changer. If you do not stay in the hotel and you go and explore that. When I got back from Cuba, I went with friends. A friend is Cuban, so we stayed in the family home, which has got nothing, and you take everything for granted. So if you go to a kind of restaurant, your options are, we've got chicken, and then you're waiting for them to say something else, and then you're like, oh no, I think that is it.
That's the menu.
That is it. And if they don't have something, they don't have something. It's not like the kind of service that you expect. Well, the restaurant will have choice. No, this is what there is. Do you want it or do you not? And I love that. But when I got back to the airport, we did it via Milan. So you stop off in Milan and then head on to Havana. But at the airport, I was just with the sensation I felt when I went into this prep with all that choice. My head melted. I was like, I don't know how I feel. There is too much. Why was I complaining before about there's not this, there's not that? So I think everyone needs to do one holiday like that. So you just appreciate the things that you already have. So that was a holiday trip that made me realize, and I'm only reminded of it because I've got the cigars on my shelf. I'm giving across that I'm some sort of smoker. I'm not. I haven't smoked one of them since I got back, but that's the thing you kind of do to help out a family. You buy the cigars and then that gives them money to spend. So but you need to go on those holidays where your opinion changes, or you actually love your home life even more because you've been there. Yeah. Thought I'd just add that in to add more time on now.
Oh, mate, add all the time you like. It's been absolutely incredible. Thank you so much, Tom, for coming on. It really does mean a lot to me. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Mate, Alex, an absolute pleasure. So hopefully we'll get to do it again sometime in person. Awesome. I can show you the photos. Who does that these days? Show you the old photos.
Maybe, I reckon probably 2022, perhaps.
Yeah, this was me in lockdown. This was me doing a Zoom gig for Amazon. This is this. Like, no, let's not do that one.
Quality. Thanks so much, Tom.
Pleasure, mate.